modern environmental movement began in 1962 with the publication of Rachel Carson's best-selling book, Silent Spring. And ever since then, doomsdayers have been warning us about imminent environmental catastrophes that ultimately didn't happen. We all worried needlessly about acid rain, expanding deserts, and global cooling. But these failed predictions weren't quite dire enough to make our list. The number 5 environmental disaster that didn't happen: Frankenfoods.
Frankenfoods, one of my favorite myths.
10 years ago, the greatest environmental scare story was Frankenfoods.
In her book Stolen Harvest, Vandana Shiva wrote, "The gradual spread of sterility in seeding plants would result in a global catastrophe that could eventually wipe out higher life forms, including humans."
This was just nonsense upon stilts.
Back in the 1990s, finally some biotech companies were able to endow crops, genetically modify them and genetically enhance them to resist pests and to resist herbicides. Now, there are a lot of benefits to that. If you resist pests, for example, then you don't have to spray pesticides on the plants.
It's been a revolution in agriculture that's actually been part of the solution to improving food production around the world.
Every independent scientific body that has ever investigated biotech crops has found them to be both safe for human beings and safe for the environment. Every one of them.
The number 4 environmental disaster that didn't happen: the end of biodiversity.
So these scaremongers were claiming that our emissions into the atmosphere and our waste into the water was going to be the major driver of species extinction.
For example, back in 1970, S. Dillon Ripley, who was the head of the Smithsonian Institution, predicted that 70 to 80% of all animal species would be extinct by the year 1995. That didn't happen.
Those claims have become part of a mantra from the environmental movement, not based at all upon evidence.
Since the 1970s, a total of 7 animals have gone extinct in the U.S.
3 of them were small freshwater fish, 1 was a freshwater clam, and 2 were very small birds. It's sad that they are gone, but this is not a mass extinction.
The number 3 environmental disaster that didn't happen: the energy crisis. On the first Earth Day in 1970, ecologist Kenneth Watt declared, by the year 2000, if present trends continue, we will be using up crude oil at such a rate that there won't be any more crude oil.
The energy crisis erupted in the 1970s after the Arab oil embargo against the United States.
OPEC, the Organization of Oil-Producing Countries, organized a cartel, and that cartel reduced output. And when output of a good is reduced and demand stays the same, prices rise.
And of course what happened is our government did all kinds of idiotic things under President Richard Nixon. We started rationing gasoline, among other things.
The reality is that every time these resources become more scarce, the price goes up, and entrepreneurs identify new ways of supplying us with energy.
The number 2 environmental disaster that didn't happen: a silent spring. We've already mentioned the importance of Rachel Carson's book to the environmental movement, but Silent Spring wouldn't have grabbed the number 2 slot in our countdown if Carson's predictions had come true.
This book was arguing that the use of synthetic chemicals, and specifically pesticides, was destroying the natural world. That the spring would be silent because the birds would all be poisoned by our pesticides and our synthetic chemicals.
Well, people were worried about insecticides because insecticides kill things.
She also was arguing that the use of these synthetic chemicals were going to create epidemics of cancer.
So it was a really apocalyptic vision that was frankly based on a flimsy and inaccurate representation of marginal science.
Pesticides are not a big deal. In fact, a cup of coffee has more carcinogens in it than you're likely to get from exposure to synthetic carcinogens in a year.
In response to all the hype about pesticides, governments around the world have banned DDT, and those bans have led to some decidedly unpleasant, unintended consequences.
DDT was the most effective chemical for controlling malaria mosquitoes around the world.
The result? Well, now 1 million people a year are dying of malaria.
There is a cost-benefit analysis here. Do we want to save eagles or do we want to save people? I think we can say both, but the fact of the matter is that the ban was too harsh, too strong.
I mean, this is a serious human tragedy that can be directly correlated to Silent Spring.
And now, the #1 environmental disaster that didn't happen: Malthusian famine! In his 1968 book, The Population Bomb, Paul Ehrlich wrote, "The battle to feed all of humanity is over. In the 1970s, hundreds of millions of people are going to starve to death, in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now."
We couldn't save countries like China, we couldn't save countries like India, we couldn't save a whole bunch of places in Africa, and what we had to do in order to forestall this overpopulation trend is to stop sending them food.
Ehrlich was just spectacularly wrong.
Basically, if we had followed his policies, we would have actually created the famines that he claimed were inevitable.
Although population has increased considerably, food output per capita has risen faster.
What has happened is that when Ehrlich was writing in around 1970, the average woman on planet Earth was having about 5 children over the course of her life. That is down to 2.4 now and continues to fall. Unlike animals, what we do is have fewer children and invest more money in them and make them better off.
More people are being fed better today than at any time in human history.